It really is the way we've always wanted to teach. When you imagine going into teaching, it's not because you looked at the options and said, well, this will be the best gig I can get. There's some reason, intrinsic, passionate reason that we become educators.
Welcome back to Educator University. As teachers, we've all faced students who check out in classrooms that feel like they're stuck in a routine. Today, we're joined by Ryan Stoyer, a former classroom teacher and the author of PBL Simplified, to talk about project-based learning and how it can change all of that. In this episode, we break down what PBL really is, why it works, and how you can start using it without adding more to your plate. Welcome, Ryan.
Hey, thanks for having me, Annie. Glad to be here.
It's great to have you. And I think just kind of starting off, we have a lot of acronyms in education. PBL is one of them. Could you break down what it stands for and what it means to you and what you do?
It is not the professional badminton league. Occasionally that'll get crossed into
Good.
social media. That's not the same PBL. So project-based learning it's the way teachers have always wanted to teach. Like it's what we dream of when we want to teach. Your learners are curious, they're empowered, they're active, all while they're learning our standards. So probably on a more technical note, if you don't know about PBL, it's really a framework, and learners are going to solve real-world problems. That's a key aspect while mastering academic standards. It's not separated from those. And they're going to build those collaborative skills. They're going to work in groups. They're going to have critical thinking skills that they're working through. It's all within the authentic context, though, of a real-world problem.
Yeah. And how is it different than maybe, a lot of us have grown up very differently in terms of learning. How would it be different from maybe some of the traditional experiences that we've had as children growing up in school?
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up in a traditional teaching environment, right? I was very good at it. I got like a 4.2 grade point average, and I was a three-sport athlete. Then went on to a Big Ten college, so more traditional teaching, a lot of lecture style. What I think the biggest difference is that in what that kind of, at least what it brought out in me, was just, it was a passivity. I accepted what I was told, and then I just essentially put it back onto a test or an essay or whatever I was asked to do. And it became a very passive process. And uh, then when I was in the classroom, I started out teaching that way because that's what I knew. I started out teaching traditionally. And I found out that at some point I was really rewarding compliance. Those kids that did what I asked them to do, they got good grades, and those that didn't fit, didn't. And what I noticed is some of the kids that weren't doing what I asked them to do actually had some really good thinking and really good learning that was happening, but they didn't quite fit that connection. So I think in traditional teaching where you've got more of a lecture style, when kids are just expected to pick things up, those that do and have a great memory are rewarded, and those that don't can be dinged, if you will, in the game of school.
So it really opens up the field to more learners and having more opportunities for people and kids showing their strengths, it sounds like.
I think that's fair. And I think the other thing is what I noticed again in my journey is that I went on to be an engineer because I was good at math and science. Everybody said that's what you do. If you grow up in Indiana, you go to Purdue. So that's what I did, but it turns out I didn't, I was good at it, but it was not my gifting. It wasn't my passion. It's not really what I wanted to do with my life. And I never questioned any of those things. I was never asked, why are you learning those things or to problem solve? I just did what I was supposed to do. So I think for learners at really the full range of the spectrum, I think project-based learning helps because even if they're good at school, they need to be able to branch out and use those tools that they have. And then even if they're not doing so well in school, it easily lights them up because they see the why for their learning.
Yeah, so what does it actually look like in a pragmatic way? Like we're talking about what does it look like in the classroom for us for students or teachers to start incorporating this into their classroom?
Sure. So it probably makes sense to look at a unit. So if you have a unit that's, let's just say it's 4 weeks long, you're going to launch with an entry event. So let's give it some skin. So let's say it's a genetics project. So you have somebody from the Hemophilia Society come in and launch this genetics project, and they do an entry event. It's going to happen day one before any of the learning has happened in this unit. And they're going to say, hey, kids, today, real parents are going to find out that their child has a genetic disease. And they want to know 2 things. They want to know, number 1, is my child going to be okay? Number 2, everything there is to know about that particular disease. Hey, 8th graders, would you help these parents learn about these diseases by putting pamphlets and PSAs and slide decks into doctors' offices? So that's the challenge that happens right off the bat, often with the community partner in what we call an entry event. And then you go through a series of need to knows. The kids say, yep, I would do that, right? I want to help people. They say, well, okay. Well, they look at the rubric. They have to understand the Punnett square. And the kids say, well, I want to help. I want to help people. I have no idea what Punnett square is. So teacher says, well, would you like me to teach you that? And the kids actually say, well, I want to help these people, Okay, well, you have to learn the Punnett square in order to help these people. So you want me to teach you that? Yes. And now that's the switch is the students are now asking you to teach them something so that they can solve this real world problem. And then you go through 3.5 weeks or so of learning probably a lot of the same learning that you're doing in that genetics unit that you normally would in a traditional classroom, assuming you've got best practices in place. And then at the end, they're going to present those ideas to an authentic audience. And they know that from day one. So doctors, nurses come in, maybe parents that have a child with a genetic disease, and the kids are going to present these ideas to them. And somebody's actually going to hear their ideas and what they learned.
I feel like it solves the question of when students ask us, why are we learning this? It's like it kind of just takes that question right out of our vocabulary.
Yeah. And what it does to zone in on that, Annie, is a lot of times our why is there, right? It's like you have to learn the Punnett square so you can do well in biology your sophomore year of high school. But that why is so far away for a teenager, right? So we're bringing the why a lot closer. We're saying that same why is legitimate. You do have to know that your sophomore year. It'll help. But now we're helping somebody who's right in front of us. In the next 4 weeks, this is really important. So here is your why.
And I have to say, from my personal experience, I actually, in the past couple of years, have switched subjects from language arts to teaching a foods class. And I never thought about it as project based learning, but it really is in that way, in that we have every day or every couple of days, we have a project of making this food. And I think that there is like, it's funny to see the difference because back when I taught language arts, it was always like, why are we learning this? And now it's like they
Hmm.
fight for the jobs to go into the stations and to work. And it's a different experience of learning. Yeah.
Hmm. That's
Yeah.
so good. It's the purpose is really important. I think we talk about purpose and why and light bulb moments with kids. So it really revolves around the authenticity and the real world problem solving.
I'd love to hear more about your experience. You have actually helped a struggling school to use project-based learning to kind of shift the way they do teaching and to help teachers find more joy and also students find better learning experiences. Can you talk about your experience and how that happened and what happened there?
Yeah, for sure. So we took seventh and eighth grade in a large urban school, and we took 25% of the kids and gave them project based learning for their 4 core classes. And what we saw, I'll start with what we saw, is with 25% of the kids, we only had 8% of the discipline. And attendance went up 1.5%. And in an F school, we would have been a B on standardized tests. So generally, kids came to school and generally did what they're supposed to do. They're still teenagers. There's still 8% of discipline, right? So those things were still there. And that happened because it was the same kids. It's the same kids that I had when I was teaching traditionally because we were demographically balanced in that process, right? But the difference was, whereas when I was teaching traditionally, I would have kids that might get a 20% for the entire 9 weeks in my language arts class, right? So I'm with you. Like I feel like, why do I need to know this many adverbs? But now they had a purpose for it. Like we were doing this work so that we can rework the curriculum at a local nonprofit or so that we can register people to vote. And the so that really gets kids to just move. In the first 3 PBL units we did that year, the first year, every kid turned in every assignment. I mean, that was insane to me, right? Like that had never happened. Like I had a fairly large percentage that just turned in next to nothing, right? And suddenly, same kids, same environment, but really different instructional model and different why, and it made a huge difference.
And that was like a year-long program you did, or was it more like a unit-based program that you did to see the change? Can I ask? Yeah.
Yeah, great question. So it was year long. So that's how we delivered all of their language arts, math, social studies, and science content, and then they went kind of off team, if you will, to their other classes.
I know it's maybe been a bit since you've done that. Have you seen in terms of those students and their real world experience as they've moved on in life, has it affected them in a positive manner in terms of their outcomes later on in life?
Yeah, great question. One of the trickiest things to measure, really, right, in education is like once they get kind of move out of that K-12 environment, it's hard to get data. But anecdotally, a lot of it from Facebook, really, right, is like where are you guys at? So one of my favorite examples is actually from a young man who had the lowest score in the entire school. And we started giving him workshops. We started giving him need to knows and answering his questions. And he found out that if he asked questions, we would do a workshop on it. So he asked more questions. Undoubtedly, he started to try, right? So that helped quite a bit as far as raising his test scores. But then he got out of high school, didn't go to college. He went to go work for FedEx, actually as a package handler. Steady job, benefits, like number one, that's a pretty good decision for him. Like, good job. But then he saw that if he got a certification for a forklift operator, that it was job security and he got a pay bump. Okay. And then he saw if he got a hazmat certification. Again, even more job security and more of a pay bump. So then he got married and it's like he has a steady job. And if we're real honest, back in 7th grade, that's not what we would really thought he was headed for, right? It was just, he didn't have any ambition. He was trying not to do anything. And of course, he had a lot of things stacked against him, right? But project-based learning ignited him to go and do, I, I think, a really powerful and courageous thing that a lot of people don't do. He could have stayed in that entry-level package handler position and been laid off, right? But he secured something for his family. I still think he plays too many video games, but that's his choice, right? But he made the really responsible choice to kind of level up what he was doing. So that's one of the examples that I think is fun to share.
Yeah, that is really an inspiring story. And like you talking about his story, he's taking a more active role in terms of not just getting the job, but then getting multiple things to increase his pay. And it takes a lot of initiative and confidence in yourself. So that really is a story that shows the growth and learning that happened there. Yeah.
I think that's the difference between the passivity and the empowerment. Those are kind of the words I like to use. I think when I was teaching in a traditional classroom, I was very relational. Like kids liked being in my class. I did a lot of those things, but it was very me oriented, trying to do things, to kind of bump up the language class. But it was still a passive portion for the kids for the most part. But then it's when they're empowered to actually create things and learn, not always on their own, sometimes on their own, but always scaffolded in some form. Like the teacher's still an integral part to the classroom, but they're feeling that empowerment and the problem solving portion. So when they get out of school, they have those muscles built up and they use them. They stay empowered.
Yeah, there really is. You can kind of see from your stories and your experiences that the benefits to the students is really, really great. And I think that the question for us as teachers is, how does it benefit us as teachers in terms of
Mm,
right now, burnout is such a big deal. And I feel like that's something that
sure.
I'm wondering, have you seen teachers experiencing more joy in their job using this model?
The answer is yes, we do. When I opened up, you say, like, what is PBL? It really is the way we've always wanted to teach. Like when you imagine going into teaching, it's not because you looked at the options and said, well, this will be the best gig I can get. This is the best job. There's some reason, intrinsic, passionate reason that we become educators. We want light bulb moments for kids. We want them to have more opportunities now because they took our class than if they hadn't. And we run into teachers that sometimes they had a great teacher and they want that experience for other kids. Sometimes they had an awful experience. They don't want anybody to have that, right? So that's why we get into teaching. And what happens sometimes, I think you get in a traditional environment and there's a lot of things that happen in education where you're not really fulfilling that passion of why you got into the craft, right? And it's frustrating. And that's where burnout is. Because PBL isn't necessarily an easier way to teach. It's a shift. It's different. Uh, but what part of your bucket that gets filled is that you see the empowerment of your learners. You see the purpose in the learning, and that is what keeps people coming back again and again.
Yeah. I think one thing we as teachers hear, an extra thing, sometimes we're like PBL, like it sounds exciting, but also like another thing to our plate. So what
Yes.
is like when you hear someone say that kind of thing of maybe asking you, how do we make this something that teachers incorporate without being like additional work outside of the contract hours or adding extra
Mm,
stress that, they can't really manage at this moment?
yeah. So I think the easiest place, if somebody just wants a place to start, I think there are some PBL shifts that you can make. That's kind of what we're calling them. I think there's a new book brewing around this idea of PBL shifts. What are some small shifts that you can make? So some really easy ones, I think, are to give kids some voice and choice. On a daily basis, kids don't typically have much choice in what they're going to do, and people don't really listen to what they're doing. So where are some places you can give them? And a really easy one is to just get some Post-it notes at the end of a day or at the end of a unit. Just ask them, what are some things that you liked about today or that you liked about this unit? What are some things that you would want to do differently? And 2 different Post-it notes, I like and I wonder. And they put as they leave the classroom, the I like goes on the door, the I wonder goes on a window, however you want to do it. But now suddenly you've got a list of, your 30 kids. You've got all these likes, things that they like, and you should talk about those. And then things that they wonder about, things they want to change. And just find one of those things that they want to change that you can change, right? Like they're always going to ask for more time, right? You can't always do that, right? They might ask for a pop machine in your classroom. Like, okay, I can't do that. But they might ask for an extra 10 minutes to study before a test. You could probably do that. Or maybe you could do 5. And when you give it to them, don't just give it to them. Like say, according to what you asked us to do, we're going to give you 5 minutes to study before this test because you guys asked for it. And it's a very small step. It's really powerful for kids. 'Cause like, oh, here's an adult that listened to what I said and then changed what they were doing because of it. So finding some place where you can just interject voice and choice is a really big deal, and then just kind of monitor what you see from that. The second one I would offer is a community partner. The other thing that we think is really important in the PBL world is community partners. Somebody from the outside that comes in and says this work is important. So typically, you might do a presentation in your class where they present to you and the other kids in the classroom, and they get a grade of some kind. And generally, it's okay for me to present garbage to the teacher that loves me and kids that think it's funny, right? But you bring in somebody else from the outside that comes in a suit and tie. It's like, whoa, wait a minute, this is different. I want to do I want to do a good job. I at least don't want to do a bad job. Is that person mean? Are they nice? Why are they here? And as a teacher, we frame that and say, well, they're here because your work's really important and they want to hear what you have to say. And you can actually do that without really any of the other PBL moves that we might talk about. Is your same presentations, just invite in a community partner. And it could be your uncle who's an architect, right? It could be your friend. It doesn't matter. Somebody from the outside, and just watch the subtle shifts that happen in that one move. It's pretty exciting. You might start getting hooked.
Yeah, I wonder if even just asking parents if they wanna come see what's happening in the classroom would be appropriate. I remember when I was in 4th grade, we had a play, and the parents came and watched us, and I still remember, I was soldier number 3 in Hamlet, but I still remember, all the pieces of it. So, yeah, it's the partnership of the parents coming in and community seeing us was a huge deal. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
just adds a different dynamic, right? When you're soldier number 3, but your friend's parents are watching, it just adds a little something to it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I love that idea of low lifts because someone listening today might think, okay, I could get some student feedback. I could do an exit ticket. I could do something like that where it's something where it just is a simple post-it note kind of thing that I can achieve that. I'm also wondering for someone listening, let's say that they are maybe a veteran teacher and they're like, you know what, I actually am ready for a challenge. So like I'm not overwhelmed. I'm kind of feeling like I want a little bit of scratching that itch of like, let's try it something, let's dive deeper. What would you give to them in terms of like some ideas to kind of dive deeper into PBL?
Sure. So, as far as the structure, I mean, that's why I wrote PBL Simplified, right? So you've got like a $15 option, right? Of you can get the book. It literally walks you through the 6 steps. It gives you wins, fails, and where to start. So I'm not advocating it's going to be perfect, right? But I do give you some of the places where I've failed or others have failed, so you don't have to do those same things. So as far as the process, I think that's where I'd start because there's also a bunch of resources connected to it. We give you a little URL like pblsimplifiedbook.com, gives you planning forms and all the stuff to get started. Uh, and I think that's important because it's enough of a shift from traditional teaching that you probably need a little extra prodding if you really want to go all in, right? And then I would, as you're doing that, I would think through a unit that you have that is one of two things. One, you think you just kind of rock it, like maybe it's your favorite unit, but there's not a community partner in there, and you want to like ramp it up. The other place that I like to look is kind of those dry standards where it's like you're not even looking forward to that unit, right? It's like, I do not want to teach compound complex sentences again this year, but I have to. Like, how can you liven that one up? So make that one a PBL unit because engagement goes up immediately with project-based learning because it's more engaged. I remember we had one PBL unit where we did the traditional like clean up the park right in your local area, but then we took what we found and graphed it and then asked the city council for a certain number of recycling bins versus garbage bins. So we made it real world. But there were kids that were not engaged in school at all. Like their other teachers would say, no, these kids are not engaged. But they were fighting over garbage to like get into their bags so they had better results. And so the engagement goes up immediately. But you still get to watch the rigor too, right? Like you still get a handle on the academic standards that are in there. So I think that's probably where I would start. It felt a little marketing advertiser-ish to suggest my own book, but I think you need a little bit of help, and I think there's a lot in there.
Well, you've probably worked very hard in terms of your experience and what you have to offer. So I feel like that makes a lot of sense that to have it all condensed in one space would be helpful for teachers listening. I think that listening, the big thing that I think teachers don't think about that I think they don't think about till they start doing it is how are they going to react to this PBL strategy? Could you talk about your
Mm,
experience when you implemented it into your schools? Was there a pushback in terms of people saying, well, why aren't they sitting in their seats? Why aren't they doing a worksheet? Or were they kind of like, oh, go for it, you know?
a great question. That is going to differ by administration for sure. I'm sure the first thing teachers think about is their evaluation. And it kind of depends on where you're at on that spectrum. Like I'm an innovator, so I have no problem pushing boundaries. So in some respects, before we kind of got this full on community, like I pushed boundaries, and some people liked that, some people didn't. But that was, gosh, it was 10 years ago or so, right? Maybe more. What we see now is that when we look at your teacher evaluation, it's actually the opposite. Now, when you get to the right side of the rubric where you want to be on that teacher evaluation, there's things like student empowerment and student voice. And you might be wondering, how do I get to student empowerment? And so I think a lot of evaluations have changed where you almost need project-based learning and the collaborative nature to get to that portion of your evaluation that you want to get to. So I think it's a little bit different now. So my guess would be what I would do personally, and I guess this is what we teach too, is talk to your principal. Like, this is what I'm going to be doing. I'm planning out this PBL unit. Here's why. I want to increase engagement in my classroom, and I want my kids to get 21st century skills. So here's what I'm going to be trying. Here's what it looks like. It's over four weeks. You're welcome to come in at any time, but it might look a little bit different, right? If you come in an entry event day, we're going to have a community partner. Kids are going to be taking notes, and they're going to be asking questions. If you come in during a need to know day, it's going to look like this. During presentation day, it's going to look like this. So I just want to communicate to you what it's going to look like. So if you wanted to make the jump, and you want to be proactive about it, that's probably what I would recommend.
Yeah, I like that idea of giving an admin a little bit of a heads up because, like you said, it might look different in different portions of the lesson. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've gone through a lot of great information about PBL. Are there any final thoughts that you want to share with teachers before we kind of move into some fun questions?
Yeah, for sure. Fun questions. That's exciting. Final thoughts, I think, are that PBL is possible in any classroom and in any school. At this point at Magnified Learning, we've actually been doing this about 15 years, which means I was in the classroom more than 15 years ago. I tried to say 10, but I'm older than that apparently. We've seen it done everywhere: rural, suburban, urban, small school, large school. We've worked the largest district in a state and the smallest district in a different state, right? So it works everywhere. We've seen lone wolves do it. We've seen full implementations. And what we see is project-based learning increases engagement, and not just engagement, right? It's not just cookies and movies, right? That would just be engagement. It's engagement and rigor. I would claim that you can't get to the rigor that you want, your deep academic learning, without engagement. So we bring up engagement so that you can get to the deep academic learning that you want. So we see, Title I elementaries that were a D, and now they're an A according to our state's testing scores in just 2 years. So it can work systematically. It can work within a classroom. There are a ton of ways to start. I think the last thing would be, you're not the only one considering it, right? There are schools out there that are, we have PBL model schools. There's likely someone around you that's using project-based learning, and you can go check it out. Go see it. Instead of asking to go to a conference, go visit a school that's doing project-based learning and take really good notes. There would be some things that you definitely want to come replicate, and there might be some things you don't, and that's fine too, right? But go out and see it and give it a try.
Yeah, some great kind of final thoughts there about PBL. We have some fun questions. They're just like you can answer in a word or a short phrase or however long you want to answer to help my audience get to know you better. The first one here is your favorite teacher lunch.
Favorite teacher lunch? As eating with kids in the cafeteria.
That's fun. Your best behavior management tip for the classroom.
Presence, like physical presence, like get close to those folks that you need to get close to.
Yeah, that nonverbal. Awesome. Teacher that made a difference in your life.
Oh, great question. Mr. Simon. He told great stories. He cared about kids, and that's who I always wanted to teach like.
Yeah. Last lesson you taught,
Ooh, in the classroom?
or actually even in
Um,
your own life, you could say either one.
uh, in my own life, my geeky world now is like, so I'm working with districts and planning out project-based learning rollouts. For us, it's a district of like 16,000 kids. So we're trying to plan that out. It's complicated. It's going to work, and it's going to be awesome for a lot of kids.
Fun. And lastly, where can my audience find you if they want to learn more about your book or your programs?
The best place to go is what is PBL? So whatispbl.com. You go to whatispbl.com. There's some freebies you can download to get started. There's a more in-depth definition of project-based learning with some stories, some videos, Again, great place to start. They can always email me at ryan@magnifypbl.com, ryan@magnifypbl.com. And actually, if they just put in like free ebook, we can email them a free ebook if they'd like of PBL Simplified. It's a full version of the book. Happy to get it out to people.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ryan. Appreciate you being here and excited to hear from teachers about how they're going to use PPL in their classroom after this episode. And yeah, all the work you're doing.
Annie, thanks for having me, and thanks for having your podcast and doing such an awesome job. It's well done, and it's important support for our teachers right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much.